how's it going there? Back again for another episode. Got my son Lucas here with me. He's 40 years old, working on the rails since he's 18. A couple of these stories we're going to tell today he's been a part of. Some of the school shooting stuff, I was going to start out with him and when he was a kid, and then some of our rail stories we got together on this one. So I'd use him, brought him in the first guest. Great deal. Yeah, I want to start off with the guns in school and what's really going on, what I believe, and try to find out the root cause of it, because we got a lot of problems out there and we need to really figure out what they are. So I want to back up and kind of look back a little bit and talk about my experience and what I think and what I've seen happen throughout the years, being a baby boomer. When Luke was 7, 8 years old, he came home from school and had told me that the school had told him that if I spanked him again, he can call CPS. And I told him instantly, I said, well, if you call CPS, it'll be the last phone call you ever make. I said, you can go tell that to your teacher. And next day he did. And so the next day I was in the office. And, I had to explain myself to, I can't remember who it was, a principal or school superintendent, teacher, whatever it was, whoever he confronted, they called me and I went in and basically told him the same thing, well, let me tell you right now, if my son calls CPS on me, we got a big problem. I got a big problem in school, period. So anyway, about that same time, that was taken, away from parents, the right to spank their children, accountability. Because I had a couple of buddies that I remember vividly, if you were to, at that point, from that point on, there was a couple, if you were to spank your child and they did call CPS, they would come take your child. And it happened to a couple of my friends. Then, it's just one of those things that once it starts, somebody's got to test it, and then all of a sudden people start realizing, no, that's the real shit. So we were stripped of our rights as parents to really discipline our children. But at the same time, they were stopped corporal punishment. All the way through me, through school, you got the hack from the gym teacher or whoever. Well, they stopped that too at the same time. So now you've got, parents aren't disciplined. There's no accountability, there's no discipline. Teachers aren't disciplined. And now their big idea somebody came up with, and it's just the mindset of these people that we're dealing with now that from way back when, they've filtered, they've infected our system so bad that now they're at high places in government, they're at high places in schools, and they're infected in everything. The court system, laws. So at the same time, these people decided to start giving kids pills, giving them, an acronym, ADD or ADH, or I don't know, they had so many of them. I refuse to let my son take pills or any of my children, period. But I think, I'd like to let him tell a story about him growing up around his, family, his mom and his dad had another wife. She had a dad and a stepmom, and he had children later too, and their children are about the same age as my children, and so they kind of grew up together. I'm gonna let him tell a little bit about that.
You're talking about my uncle.
Yeah, your uncle Brett.
So I have an uncle. He's about 1.5 years older than I am, and we grew up, grew up at the same time, both in small towns. And I just know that growing up, even the parents of the friends I had, they would spank me if I got out of line. You know what I mean? That was just how it was growing up. Is the parents and people that we were closest to took discipline on themselves. And I know that you spanked many of my friends. They still tell me about it.
Well, it was just the way it went. You had to discipline, you had to have accountability. And like he says, I would expect any other parent, if my children are out of line, to whack them upside the fucking head. And I'll do the same to their children. And they knew that growing up. They knew that I was that kind of parent. I was coaching. I coached all their kids. And if I didn't coach their children, I was involved playing against them until, junior high stuff, and they're all playing together. But no, I was involved with most of these children and their parents, and great group of parents there in Winlock. We met some really good people. In my life, they were good people.
I think about Ma Dorner. Linda Dorner was one of those figureheads of the community that every child looked to for discipline or fear of acting out.
I was scared of her too.
Yeah.
Okay, just so you know. She could be mean.
You know, we had these people that grew up and disciplined us and kept us in line. Well, on the other side of it, you look at, you know, my uncle was raised by my grandparents, and they were much older, and they were more of the
They were more liberal.
time out.
Yeah, but they were also more liberal. Your grandfather and grandmother from that side were definitely liberal. I mean, they both worked for the government, and you know, the grandma was high up in the state of Washington, very intelligent woman. And the grandpa, the same thing. I mean, his grandpa, Burry, I mean, he was a great guy, smart, but they were just liberal. You know, they were just liberal people,
and much older, and didn't interact with the kids as much. And I know that Brett acting out, you know, because he's, you know, they were probably 45 years old by the time I had Brett. So by the time he was...
Oh, Carol, the mother was, but he was older.
Grandpa Bert was even older, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was 10, 20 years old.
So he didn't have the interaction. And now you look at the parents nowadays, they have the same interaction that Grandpa Bert had with Brett. Is, you know, it's a lot more distant. They didn't have that interaction. They didn't have discipline. They didn't have the coaching that you did. And, you know, I remember Brett, as a young kid, got put on I don't remember if it was Adderall or Ritalin or whatever it was, but I know that he was prescribed some form of ADHD medicine. And, you know, he was just always wound tighter than shit. Mm-hmm. And that medicine, later on, you know, we were wrestling, the sophomore year of wrestling, I was trying to drop weight, you know, and he gave me some of these pills to help me drop weight. It was a speed-like substance that, you know, it just had that feeling of an amphetamine. You know, and that's what they got him on. But you think about the way, I mean, Brett, didn't he burn down the railroad ties right next to the garage?
Yeah, his grandpa built a fence, and I helped him build this, like, not a fence, but a step up, and there's like 3 ties stacked up, building kind of a retaining wall. He went out and caught it on fire with a lighter, I mean, fired, and he burned it down. I mean, the kid was just, yeah, he was definitely, you know, here and there, but I just didn't think he was disciplined enough, and maybe there was more problems. I mean, he was kind of, you know, he was one of those kids that had the hyperactivity. But I guess my point to all this is that, you know, we keep talking guns in school. You know, the guns are killing people. I mean, this is a one-sided argument, you know, on the one side. On the other side, it's like, no, guns can't kill people. I got a gun sitting right behind me. They can't kill nobody unless I fucking use it, all right?
So didn't you have guns in your pickup truck going to school?
Going to high school, I had a 30-30 in the back window, always. Fishing pole and a 30-30.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it was, you know, and
you didn't kill anybody?
No, I mean, it was just a thing you do. I mean, and nowadays, you know, luckily we live here in Florida and we got, you know, open carry law now. Thank you, Ron DeSantis. I mean, great deal. It's going to help a lot of things. But the problem is that, you know, when you start giving these kids pills, well, the next thing you know, here's what happened. Then we have a Columbine shooting. The first shooting in America, 1999, 2 kids out of Columbine. I'm guessing they started their pills when they were probably 10, 11 years old, because that was about the right time. 99, I was 91, when they probably started shoving pills down their throat. Well, 8 and 10 years, here we go. So we just started a complete social experiment with kids and drugs back in the 90s, in the early 90s. And then we failed miserably. Now we're where we're at now. Now, you know, you can't keep count of the school shootings and what it is. Guns. No, it's not. We got to get to the problem. We got to find that balance of what it really is. I mean, I can give you my opinion, which I'm doing now, and I can kind of connect the dots and say, no, we didn't have school shootings before we started giving kids pills. And then we had no accountability. Can't spank them at home, can't spank them at school, and now we got to go on throughout our whole society. I mean, we've got 1 or 2 generations that we created for school shooters. I mean, no doubt about it. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what gender they are. We've created them. And now, 40 years later, we've got these people that are grown up. These people are going out to Walmart and killing people. You know, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just not at school, but it's happening everywhere. And it's not the gun. Yeah, the guns are easily accessible, and they'd love to take them from the rights of us, you know, the legal people. But that's not the percentage of people using guns and killing people. The legal gun owners aren't even on, I don't even know if we're on scale. I mean, yeah, we might commit suicide once in a while, or, you know, something happens in self-defense and they turn around, it's a gun. No, it's not. My guns never even get out for this video, and when I go target practice, I'll take them out. Otherwise, they stay in the safe, the gun safe. They're always in the gun safe. You know, so we really got to look at that, you know, and then the teachers and the professors and the administrators throughout our country have taught our children for decades now, going on 4 decades, maybe 5. Started back in Woodstock, and then we'll go over that later. That's a whole different scenario beyond 1990. But I mean, these people are back in the 70s and 60s that, you know, they grew up, went to college, and then we start producing these people that are just the mindset of, we're going to change the world, and compassion and love everybody. They spit on Vietnam vets and do all the shit they did, just unbelievable. And those people became in power, and those people are in power now with that mindset, and they say just ridiculous stuff all the time. So all these problems are kind of, you know, they're going to relate to the same thing. For me, it's all about, like right now we have, you know, injection sites in San Francisco where not only you're promoting it, right? I mean, how many times you go to treatment?
5.
Okay. 2 or 3 of them. Fuck, one time I went down to you in Huntington Beach in California, and you were in a co-ed one. Or yeah, you were going over the girls, and they were over your house, and they were partying. I mean, this wasn't a treatment center. I showed up there, and he's in a freaking, looks like he's a goddamn cholo. He called me the day before and said, I'm on my year, you know, anniversary. And so I drove all the way down there, LA, from fucking San Diego, thinking he was doing good. And I looked at him, and he was passed out on the couch. But I guess my point to that is, that was supposed to be a rehab facility, but it wasn't. It wasn't really doing anything. I mean, it didn't do any good for him. It wasn't until he took it serious and he got his head straight and he got his mind right that he was able to do and quit. 4 years clean and sober now, you know. And he had to struggle through all those 40 years of not only what he went through in school and stuff, he stayed away from, you know, teachers. I kept him away from the pills at school, you know, from teachers, administration, but, you know, we all fall into our own little shit.
We'll talk about that a little bit more, but, you know, like you said, I've been to many rehabs. You know, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Drugs and alcohol are a huge part of my story. Every rehab center I ever went to, first thing they did was try to give you pills. This last time was the first time I refused all medication. They tried to give me Suboxone. They tried to give me multiple relaxers.
Keep you going. Keep you hooked.
Because the first time I went in, the first thing they did was, we're here. We're going to give you Suboxone or Subutex, whatever it is, the opioid. You know, and we're going to give you this to help wean you off it. Fuck, I was hooked on that for 3 months before I finally went back out and got more heroin.
Well, your aunt, my oldest sister. Not my oldest sister, my youngest sister.
Yeah, Debbie.
She's been through cancer a couple times. Had a hard life.
She'll never get off methadone.
But
never.
She did heroin for a while, and then the answer to that was the government put her on methadone. And that must have been, she's 60. And that had to have been when she was 30, mid-30s. She's still on methadone, as far as I know. Maybe not, but I think so. I think she has to. And it's kind of sad. I mean, yeah, she needs medication because of the cancer, and, you know, I mean, she's been in bad shape for a long time in her life. And I feel, you know, I've always felt sorry for her, but they've always just shoved pills down her. And
that was my point, was the fact that they had a solution, and it was in a pill form. Take this pill. This pill will help you. They do it, you know, Alexa, your granddaughter, my daughter, 16 years old, has spoken with some people, and, she might be depressed. I said, you're not depressed. She talks about depression and anxiety, and they want to get her on some medication.
No,
and I told her,
better not.
No, I told her absolutely not. I said, here's 3 things.
Straight to the fucking roof.
3 things you got to do before you can ever seek any type of that, and that's some physical activity. That's putting the GD phone down, and that's eating better. You do those 3 things, and you still have some sort of problem, then we can go talk to somebody. But when you're on your phone all damn day, and, you know, just sitting at home, and that's what's happened generation after generation.
No, these kids are built with a phone in their ass, are born with it. And listen, his granddaughter, I went to take her home the other day. It's probably been about a month or so.
Your granddaughter, my daughter.
Well, my granddaughter, his daughter. So I was taking her home, and she forgot her charger back here, and the phone was getting low. So I get her home, and she realized when she got home that she didn't have her charger, and she started freaking out. I mean, panicking. And it's like 2 miles to go to the store in the heat. You know, here in Florida, it's fucking humid. You're walking around out in the sun, you can die out there. I mean, so anyway, so she's like, no, Grandpa, I need to go to the store right now. I said, well, I'm not going to take you to the store to store a charger just so you can charge your phone. You know, when Dad gets home, he can get you one. No, I need to go right now. I'll just walk. I said, no, you're not going to walk.
You won't walk the dog around the block, but it'll walk fucking 2 miles.
Yeah, she won't walk to work. But she was ready to go. I mean, so I had to run her down and because she was panicking.
But it's, I mean, so you think about even back when I was growing up, right? That's when the game systems came into play as well. As that's when Nintendo came out.
Well, I mean, you're 40 years old, and I can say to you, you started that generation in the 90s that they grabbed most of you. You were fortunate to get away with most of it, but now you still got Fortnite in your blood every night, and your brothers, and you get to play with each other and talk to them, which is cool. You do what you want to do. I just never played any of those games. Never. I played Pong when I was Atari when I was a kid. I think we bought Atari, and I got to play it. And after that, I couldn't afford to buy any games with my family, so Pong was about the only I ever played. Then we got, Mario Brothers and shit like that. So yeah, I played some of that. But then when it got into the violent shit, I think it was Grand Theft Auto was a big one back then. And it was just so popular. Now they're just killing each other, and then kids started getting that shit. They call them Columbine, same time frame. So I can't tell you exactly, but I can just tell you, I know in that time frame, everything started happening.
Well, so you look at it, again, these kids are on this ADD, ADHD medicine. They have a hell of a time falling asleep. It's an amphetamine, right? And they get wired. So then they're without parental supervision, playing these video games all night, and their mind is warped from sleep deprivation, and
they're all fucked up. I mean, it's just chaos in their mind. When you start giving, not only just kids, but you start giving kids when they're young. I mean, because I'm talking about 1990, 91, when they were starting to give the kids pills. I don't even know how old they started giving kids. Kindergarten, first grade. I just don't. Maybe somebody else can look back. I'm just trying to give you something to put in your head to think back. Go, yeah, no, I remember that happening. No, I remember that happened. Because it all happened at once in the 90s, in the early 90s. That's when it took away discipline from parents. Well, anyway, we're gonna kind of close up on that one.
Well, real quick, touch on this. So we talked about Columbine, right? It was about school shootings. If you look through all the school shootings, all the school shooters, there's only one common denominator, and it's the fact that they were on some form of prescription medication for ADD or ADHD.
Well, that brings up a point, because I never knew that as far as research. I always guessed that. I always figured that, I wonder if all these kids are on drugs. The one common denominator, well, talking to my son, and he's done some research, and that's what he's saying. I don't know, I think so. I mean, they gotta be, aren't they? I mean, there's no other excuse for it. I mean, these kids, now we got them at 6 years old. I mean, the recent one was 6 years old. He went in and got a school teacher. Well, he didn't learn that from school or from knowing guns. He learned either from home or from his parents or whatever his environment is at home. He didn't need to learn it in sixth grade and first grade, because he's not even old enough to be in first grade yet. So I'm saying, we're teaching these kids this at home. And I don't mean we as me. I'm saying it's being taught to our children at home at a young age, right when they can walk. And then our politicians on this other side are sitting there and just throwing it out there. Oh yeah, let the killers go. It's poor of them. Oh, they're just kids. It's just getting out of control. It's out of control, and we got to stand up and look at it and try to find a balance. Try to what's really going on. How can we help solve this problem? I'm not here just to bitch about this is what happened. I'm just here to be part of the solution, the root cause. Let's quit looking at the guns. Let's just quit looking at the guns, because you're not taking my gun. I mean, for no reason whatsoever.
But not only that, so everyone talks about, the guns are the problem. There are still just as many brutal beatings and stabbings in England where there are no guns. It has nothing to do with the guns, because the people that are mentally disturbed are going to kill or going to hurt people with or without guns. So it doesn't matter.
Clubs. I mean, they're beating people over the head. They're stabbing people. I mean, I'm just saying again, you're not taking my guns. Okay. So stop. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, which is the rail half of it. Telling a rail story. We try to talk about politics. I got some major items. We're going to try to stay on topic with that, and we also want to stay on the topic with the rail. I mean, I did want to touch base on one thing this week. It's pretty important. Tucker Carlson getting, fired from Fox News, this whole election fraud stuff and Dominion machines. It's going to play out the way it plays out. I mean, we know they're all corrupt at every level. I'm not saying Tucker. I'm just saying Fox News. I'm done with them. I'll never watch Fox News again. Never drink another bud. Whatever. I mean, they dug their own grave, right? I mean, I guess people haven't learned yet that if you do that, you're done. So I'm sure Fox will start plummeting just like Bud Light. Maybe they'll pull out. I don't really care. I'm not going to watch them no more. I think Tucker will land somewhere, and I'll follow him. It might take time, and they'll do their bullshit with, you can't start a platform for 20 years or 10 years, and can't say this, can't say. That's all in the works right now. We'll go over that later. So let's go to the next phase with the rail story. So I want to do it on thermite welding, because in the early 80s, might have been right after I started. I started in 79, so, April 79. So I think it was the early 80s. Might have been 81, 80. It was right around time Mountain Blue. So, yeah, probably 80.
Mount St. Helens.
Yeah, Mount St. Helens Blue, 1980.
Thermite welding. So thermite is a pyrotechnic composition of like manganese and all sorts of stuff that superheats and melts the rail together to create continuously welded rail. And this all started back then when they came out with the CWR plan, because they were having so many
Well, it was kind of a couple things. So when you look back at it, the railroad's highest maintenance were joints, where the rail comes together, you bolt it up with bars and bolts. Well, I mean, obviously, train weighs 200,000 pounds. You're running trains, where I was working anyway at that point, you're running 50 trains a day, heavy trains, pounding over your joints, and just beats the hell out of them. So that's your highest maintenance. That was your highest maintenance on the railroad.
Weak point on the railroad.
Yeah, it was one of the weak points, but when you look at it from a cost standpoint, it was like that was the highest maintenance cost, was sniping joints and going out and tamping joints and hand tamping. You'd go out with a crew in the middle of the night because they have one load joint a train called in. It might cost a company freaking $1,000 back then to send the crew out and tamp that one joint. So they had a joint elimination program, and by doing so, they were putting ribbon rail in and then taking out any conventional rail, which is a jointed rail, and eliminating the joints, and then just thermite welding together. Because at that point they started, they had flash butt welding was just coming out. Thermite welding or flash butt might have even been out for a while, but it was still kind of new if it was. They had plants and stuff where you just bring the ribbon rail train in and unload the ribbon rail. It was flash butted in the plants. And then it became we have mobile plants. So it's good. The industry has really changed. But the thermite welding, when it started, they put it out for bid. When you're on the railroad, they put jobs out for bid and you bid it. And it was bid with like 10 men. Two grinders, 2 welders, head welder, and then you had 5 laborers. I don't know what the hell. Today you look back and you go, what the fuck?
What'd you say your first job was when you were doing?
My first job as a thermite welding crew was to dig a hole, and then when they knocked the top off of the weld, which was hot, you had to bury. My job was to go take my shovel and pick up that hot piece and put it in that hole, and then when we were done at the end of the day, cover that hole up. That's all I did for like 2 days until they finally went, we got too many guys standing around doing nothing. So I think they asked a couple guys the next day, and by the first week we were whittled down to like 6 people. I was like number 6, and I think after that week I was down to 5. But it was just pretty crazy how the whole thing started. We were on push cart. You had all your equipment was on push carts, so 4x8 or 6x8 push carts, and with drawbars in between. You pull with the motor car, with the Model T engine.
Those are all rail-bound machines, so they're all steel axles that ride on the tracks, and so you have...
Can't take them off the track unless we're storing them, so they're rail tracks. Because back in that day, we didn't really have a lot of high rails. I mean, the welders had a high weld. They were doing maintenance welding, like, doing frogs and switch points and welding up that way. They usually had a high rail. They were the first ones because they had to get out of locations where you had a high rail too.
Which was rubber-tired and also steel tires.
Could go both. They could go on the road and eventually, within a few years, starting with the railroad, they went to the high rails, because even track inspecting for the first 4 years that I was there, I was running a putt-putt motor car from Kelso, Washington to Vancouver. Yeah, cold shit, man. It was fucked. But anyway, so we packed our own mud. So nowadays in the welding kits, they come with a package of mud, and you get a crucible and all that stuff. Well, we had the old steel crucible, so you had to clean it out every time because all the molten and the slag that was left over.
The crucible is the big pot on top where you put the thermite powder after you line the rails up, and then you use the sandstone, right? That describes the mold.
I'd say they're brick materials. Sandstone, yeah.
They scribe the rail, put a mold on either side of the rail and a plate on the bottom, and then the mud. You made the mud. We use clay, right?
Well, yeah, but back in the day when they first started, they had a big barrel of sand and water, and you mix sand and water with a paste, and that made it sticky, and that's what they used to seal the jackets.
God, you guys really walked uphill both ways to school, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, we did. It was fun. I dug a hole for the first. That's all I did. So anyway, I mean, and you go through that, and then So once you learn how to weld, once we got, it figured out after, months and months, I guess, and then that crew was smaller and they were doing their thing. So then they started branching off to, adding another crew because they really wanted to get this project done. So you had 2 or 3 crews or whatever. So you knew how to weld. And I think the first time I went welding away from this crew with another crew, we were welding over the Tula River Bridge right next to I-5, right outside of Castle Rock, just north of Castle Rock. Slag pan filled up, which is a dangerous thing because after you shoot the weld and it fills up in the mold, the excess comes out and goes into a slag pan. About that big, maybe 8 inches by 5 inches and 4 inches thick or deep, angled. And so the slag goes into that, and then you let it cool and stuff, and then you dump it out. It's hard, and that's how you did it. But there's situations sometimes where the slag pan was in a difficult position. And on that bridge we were on, I don't know what it was, but we knocked the slag pan into the water, and that fucking thing blew up and came back up underneath the bridge and caught on fire. And here we are with the fire underneath us. We got one extinguisher back in the day, and it was only a little tiny one, and we couldn't get underneath there where the fire was, so we were spraying the top, and all I did was, do the ties. We'll start by burning the walkway.
So the thermite, so for people that don't know, thermite turns into molten steel. It's as if it came straight out of a foundry. It's molten steel, so it could be pouring down rain, and this shit lands on wood. It's starting a fire, period.
Or if it's pouring down rain, it's going to blow
It's going to blow.
Because it gets so hot, I think it's 1700 degrees. It's something ridiculous. It's hot. And what that does is it fuses the rail together, kind of like the flush butt, because they do it with electricity, heat up the rail request and then fuse it together. Well, this fuses it together by powder that turns into liquid steel as soon as you use a striker to get it going. So it was a pretty intense, learning stuff. But like I say, I just happened to be on the first one in the country, at least in that region. There was something going on all over the country, East Coast, West Coast, wherever. We just happened to be in the region. That gang started for the first time, and I was on. So I just wanted to touch base on this. But we got a story. We got a pretty good story as after later down the line, because I worked for 4 different railroad companies and different kind of builds. BN, and then Short Line Railroad, PS&P, and then Mountain Pacific Rail, which did derailments and stuff where Luke ordered me out. And then went to Stacy Woodback, which is a new construction, streetcars, commuter rails, completely different kind of build that at the end of my career I learned. Still knew how to do railroad, but I never built, and we'll talk about that later. But
2 things we should talk about real quick. Our stories were all over 7 years ago with the statute of limitations. A thermite is very, very dangerous. Want me to tell a story about Evergreen real quick? Want to get started on this?
Yeah, but just remember, some things you take to your death, right? I mean, I told you that one.
This one's okay.
We're okay. As long as you're not going to jail, you're still working. I'm retired. I really don't give you can tell whatever's for you on that might affect you, not me.
So this is the Evergreen gantry cranes in the Port of Seattle, and we were having to go out because the trolleys that go out and offload the ships have rails on the outside of these giant I-beams. Well, me and my best friend Jose, right? Because we started railroading, and this had to have been 2002 or right after 2001, because it was right after 9/11 happened, and we had to go get our quick cards, a transportation worker identification card to be on the port and do all that. So we had to go through a process just to get onto the port, and here we are. We're a couple kids.
And we also had to do that in Bremerton, going to Bangor and the air side, so they check on your car with magnets or mirrors. Same thing at the port at that time, because there was still Homeland Security.
It was a high threat.
Yeah, it was a high threat. Yeah.
And so here we are, a bunch of redneck railroaders, and
Cowboys.
We get up on the top of this Evergreen crane, and it's 150 feet better.
Yeah, between 100 and
it's up there, and you had to get out over the beam, and then we're standing on scaffolding. It was 2 foot wide aluminum scaffolding, and it was held on with baling wire that was just wrapped around these.
No, listen, I want to back up over because these fucking iron workers came out and took this scaffolding, threw it over the edge, didn't have tie downs, weren't even harnessed up at 100 and some feet in the air. They just went up there and they jump over and fucking baling wire and tie it on with baling wire, and you're like, I just don't look right, man. And then they jump back out, like, there you go,
and left.
It's only like 2 foot wide, man, 100 and some feet in the air, man.
And the rail, so
Go ahead.
you got the scaffolding, it's about 2 foot wide, and the rail that we're welding is sitting on a I-beam ledge. It's about another foot or so. And the rail went in there and it had, you know, little shoes bolted down. Well, so we go to get up there, and you were the first one, and you climb up there, and all of a sudden you just sat there for a while.
No, I was frozen. I couldn't move. I just couldn't move.
I just remember you getting back down and go, you two, I'm going over. So me and Jose, we get up.
Near the heights, man, I couldn't move. I mean, I was frozen. So it took me 10 minutes to throw my leg back over and get to solid fucking ground because I was looking over the edge the whole time. And I was just frozen. Anyway,
Me and Jose jump over the edge, and we get our kit, and we get everything clay, and we, you know, line the rail up. We put the shoes on. We're packing the mold. We're getting ready to weld. So here we are, and Chad Holmes was up there too. I forgot about this, but Chad was one of the guys that taught me how to thermite weld, and he always made a little clay dummy to sacrifice to the thermite gods. Well, and this is where we feel like we failed, because we got everything ready. I heated the rail. We put the crucible on top. We ignite the crucible, and the slag pot's sitting up on top. We're like, oh shit! So grab slag pot and put it up there. And Chad's like, did you get the sacrifice? We're like, no, we're just shooting it. Blah blah. All of a sudden, like you said, it goes down the molds. It comes back up the risers and pours out into the slag pot. Well, it was pouring out of the slag pot down onto the scaffolding we were standing on. The aluminum scaffolding. It was going right through the scaffolding. We're like, we don't know what to do. So he's like, chuck it.
no, throw it. What else are you going to do? I mean, it's going to burn right through the scaffolding. So
They're going to take us with
when you're in the middle of that, you just got to do it. So he just chucked it.
into the port of Seattle.
Well, it was into to the Bay of Seattle, whatever. Puget Sound, obviously big ships and stuff, and there wasn't one underneath us because we were working on it. But anyway, that thing hit the water, and it made an explosion. You just
It was a grenade.
Yeah, I mean that's what it does in that quantity of the slag pad. You get it in water, it just blows up like a bomb.
Shot back up. We watched the whole thing. We watched it come up, we watched it hit again, and we watched it sink because it was glowing orange. So you could see it sink all the way to the bottom. It just sat there.
As 2 fish were floating up. Seriously, 2 fish float up. I'm looking down going, fuck, I got fish floating. And at the same time, the Port of Security is driving around with their flashers on, trying to figure out what the fuck happened.
Oh, they're everywhere.
And then all these fucking, even the truck drivers that had fucking containers on them, they stopped and got out of the truck, and everybody walked over to the edge of where we were at. And they're all looking over the edge, and we're like, just kind of waving at them.
They look up, and we're just waving. They made us come back down and talk.
Yeah, I had to go. Those guys, I had to go back down and talk to the fucking superintendent or the supervisor there. And at the same time, we were talking, income of Lot Suburban, and I'm sure he was with some sort of, government official, Homeland Security or something. He was asking questions too. So it was just an accident. We don't normally do that, but scaffolding. I told him the whole story. And he went, okay, well, we're almost done, dude. We'll finish it up and we're out of here. And they were both kind of cool about it, but it took a little while to talk to them. Everybody was pretty upset.
Yeah.
They were really upset. Anyway, that's the thermite welding, and a couple little stories there into, and then we'll touch base again next time. My son Luke, I don't know if he'll be here, but I hope bring him back again.
I appreciate you bringing me on. It's an honor.
My firstborn. First guest. Yeah, baby.
America.
Later.